Hey, welcome back to Ask and Evolve with Erica. This Q&A series is all about me taking questions from you and meeting you where you are and opening up a conversation about it. I am a nutritional therapy practitioner, which means I love to talk about all the nutrition nerdiness and helping you to balance your body or create balance in your body by giving your body the support it needs to create balance on its own. Today, we're going to be talking about gut health, specifically related to candida. This is a kind of a hot topic right now. It has been for a little while. And it is a pretty big problem across the board. I'm not going to dive into all kinds of different holes with this. I just want to have a general conversation about it and talk about addressing this specifically, what leads to it, and what this might look like. So, without having a giant conversation about gut health, what I want you to know is this. If you don't know this already, your small intestine and your gut has a lot of bacteria in it. And this bacteria is very diverse. It is called our gut microbiome. And what's interesting is there's so much information that's come out recently about how our gut microbiome impacts everything in our whole life, our immune system, the creation of our neurotransmitters or our feel-good hormones, and all kinds of things. We've learned over time as well that the more imbalanced this microbiome becomes, or the more imbalanced the environment is, that diversity of the bacteria in our gut can change drastically. And when that happens, we tend to have a very large disconnect in terms of our health. So when we think about candida, candida is a yeast, and this yeast bacteria does occur naturally in our body. All of us do have some candida. But the trouble is, when it comes to our gut microbiome or this bacteria, is that the bacteria really, again, depends on us, just like our body, to give it certain food in order to make sure that it has a good environment for this variety of bacteria to really thrive. And our very standard American diet and eating more processed foods and moving towards eating a lot of inflammatory foods, including, yes, the processed stuff, but especially stuff with a lot of added sugar in it, is tending to overfeed certain bacteria, and we're underfeeding other bacteria. And what happens over time is we get this large imbalance in our bacteria. So instead of having this really lush and diverse environment for a lot of gut bacteria to live and thrive, we're overfeeding certain bacteria and underfeeding others, so that bacteria, that yeast, candida, feeds off of sugar and a lot of other processed stuff, mostly sugar. And when we create that environment, we get a little bit of an overgrowth, a lot of bit of an overgrowth. And we can see this really develop over time with a lot of different symptoms. What's interesting about candida is, depending on your personal health history, it might shift or make you more susceptible to creating a little bit of an overgrowth in your body. For example, I am somebody who has been previously diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus, which is an autoimmune condition, and especially somebody who has an autoimmune condition typically can point to some sort of a gut disturbance, or having a disturbance in your gut bacteria, or an imbalance in that gut bacteria over time. And when that occurs, it's very easy for our gut to shift into that other space. It's almost like we're a little more temperamental. So if we are not making sure that we're feeding our gut and feeding the bacteria the variety that it requires to really make sure that the population is as diverse as possible, we can shift into this overgrowth. And when that overgrowth happens, that's when we begin to see a lot of symptoms, and they are very non-specific, and there's a lot of them. So when it comes to candida, a few things to be thinking about. Brain fog is a huge symptom. Joint pain, in general, like very chronic inflammation, slow healing process, having different types of recurring yeast infections or UTIs, whether that yeast infection is, like for females, vaginal yeast infections that are recurring, having different types of toenail fungus is another one. Things like having different types of rashes, even oral thrush is a really big one later on. That's usually a later stage sign of this bacteria out of balance. So really, why does this happen and how do we fix it? Ultimately, when it comes to if there's a little bit of a shift in the bacteria, a lot can be done just by diversifying your diet and making sure that we are eating as much variety of fruits and vegetables and real food that your body knows how to use, and eating more of these prebiotic foods, which means prebiotics are the foods that your probiotics or that bacteria in your gut can feed off of. And a lot of that looks like real food, leafy greens, onions, garlic, all that fun stuff. If we are reducing the inflammatory, very sugary foods that overfeed the candida, yeast albicans, or and underfeed our other bacteria, we're going to create balance on our own naturally. So what happens when you have this large overgrowth, and what do we do about it at that point when it's already happened? It really depends on what stage we're at with an overgrowth. If it is a very large proliferation of yeast that has been happening for a long period of time, it might look like a very in-depth protocol. I unfortunately had to go through that myself. I had some recurring symptoms that no matter what I was doing, they just, if I started eating too much sugar, they just came right back to me. And another big piece of this that I forgot to mention with the symptoms is a sugar craving. If you feel like it is 9 or 10 o'clock at night and you have to have sugar, and you have no sugar in your house and you are going to the store in your pajamas to get some, these are signals that are being sending by your body for a reason, and we need to be listening to them. And usually that means that there's something out of balance, right? So when it comes to candida, sometimes it can look like a little bit of a strict protocol, and that protocol really will involve some antivirals, reducing or eliminating as much or all sugar from the diet as possible. We want to be reducing the food that feeds the yeast while we are reducing the overgrowth and killing it off over time. Sometimes those protocols can be very in-depth depending on what level we're looking at. So if you have more questions regarding candida, please, comment on this video. I'd love to dive into it with you a little deeper. Otherwise, there will definitely be some more videos on gut health coming out, because there's more than just candida. There's a lot going on here when it comes to taking care of our gut, and it has such a large impact on our life. So again, questions, please let me know. If you have any other questions that you would like me to answer, text the number and I would be happy to dive into them in upcoming weeks.